All right, good morning, everyone. I'm very sorry to be late this morning. I just had to be in on a conference call, and it just went a little bit long. But I'm here now, so thank you for waiting. I apologize for being late. Miles is here. Good morning, Miles. As is John. Good morning, John. Daniel's here. Hello, Daniel. Saul is here. Good morning. Clara's here. Hello, Clara. Vicky's here. Hi, Vicky. Daniel's here. Hi, Daniel. And George is here, sticking his tongue out at me. It's not nice, George. Jack is here. Good morning, Jack. Anna's here. Hi, Anna. And Zion is here. Good morning, Zion. And Sam is here. Good morning, Sam. And Mike is here. Good morning, Mike. Okay. Before we get going with the social justice-y stuff, I wanted to talk a little bit about marks and grades. And so I'm still in the process of marking your micropapers and your quizzes. I'm partway through them. They're just taking me a little longer than I thought, but as I say, I'm trying to work my way through. But there's another issue we have to deal with here, and for Adel and Aliana, this will sound familiar because it's the same issue, but just sit tight. And so the issue is that we have to figure out is this. So if you remember, no, not this one. If you remember, this is from the syllabus when we first started the class, and I told you what the class is about and how you'd be marked and so on and so forth. And this is kind of how I plan to lay out the grades. And so here you can see we had micropapers and attendance and reflective activities and quizzes and a final paper. And as the term kind of unfolded, a couple of things became apparent. And one of the things that became apparent was that it was going to be a little tricky to really identify people's attendance or participation. And so obviously if you're in class and I see you right in front of me, easy. But if you're online, or if you forget to sign in, or perhaps if you sign in and then you go off and do other things, it's impossible for me to know. So there's that kind of issue. The second issue is the reflective activities. And so you'll probably say, hey, what are those? And you're saying that because, of course, we didn't do any. And so the sort of prep work and marking and other things that have happened this term made it so that I didn't really assign any. And so we've got this extra 10%, which you have nothing in that column so far. And so we have to deal with that. And so here's what I propose to you, and I'd like to do a little exercise in democracy. Here's what I propose. First of all, I would like to basically give everyone 100% in the attendance or participation column, okay? So I'd like to do that. I think maybe next term I won't do it. I won't have an attendance or participation thing because it's just too difficult to keep track of people. People might not sign in. People might be in another time zone, and so they fall asleep, but then they watch the class later, which is not quite as good, but it's still okay. And because of that, again, the attendance thing didn't really work, and so I'd just like to give everyone 100%, okay? Now, the second thing we have to figure out is that 10% that goes into the reflective activities. We have to figure out where to put that 10%. And so I foresee two options, okay? First option, we can take that 10% and put it into the quizzes, okay? So in that way, instead of quizzes being worth 20%, they would be worth 30%. Now that's a lot, and so in acknowledgement of that, what I would do is if we put the 10% onto quizzes and quizzes were 30%, I would say I'll take your best 3 of 4 quizzes, okay? So your worst quiz mark I will throw out, and I will only average the 3 best ones, okay? The second option would be that we take that 10%, we split it into 5, and we put 5% on the micropapers, and we put 5% on the quizzes. So micropapers will be worth 30%, quizzes will be worth 25. In either of those options, we will do, the attendance will be at 100%. And so you can see I've actually put both of those options up on the screen so you can see them. So either way, we do 100% attendance, and we either put the 10% on the quizzes and just take the best 3 of 4, or we split up that 10% and we do 5 on micropapers, 5 on quizzes, okay? So now let me just do this. I haven't done this.
May I have a question?
You may.
Okay, can we have an alternative, like option 3? You give us like 100% of reflective activity.
No, because I'm already kind of doing that already. I'm already floating everyone 100%, so I don't want to do it twice. That's a little excessive. And so I want to make a deal that is good for you, that actually helps you out, but within reason. So I don't want to give away the store, as they say. Well, let me see here. So I'm just looking at some of the quiz marks here, and the same pattern seems to be occurring as occurred in history. And so the pattern that was occurring was that the quiz marks tended to be lower than the micropaper marks. And so again, this is going to work out differently for different people because everybody's marks are different. But the pattern, based on the pattern I saw in history and based on what I see here, I think option 2 might be better for the average student. Because your micropaper marks are higher, if we put an extra 5% on the micropaper marks, they'll pull you up more than simply adding 10% to quiz marks, which are already on average lower. Now again, you would get the best 3 out of 4, but I still think the better deal for you is probably option 2. But again, it's going to depend on what your individual marks were, right? And so everyone's going to be a little different, but I would like to have the same thing. I would like to do the same thing for everyone. So that said, I would like to hold a vote. And so what I'll do is in the live chat, so if you're online, I'll just pop this up here on the screen and I'll just say, do you want option 1 or option 2? And so you can let me know in the live chat there. You can type in 1 or 2, and then people who are online here, you can simply raise, what's that? Oh yeah, people who are online can go do the live chat. People who are in class, sorry, you can just raise your hand, okay? So again, just to review the options, we'll do it. Attendance will be at 100% either way, and I will either put an extra 10% weight on the quizzes and just take your best 3 out of 4, and I'll throw out the one that's worst, or I will split the 5 between micropapers and quizzes. So, question?
From option 2, like for the quiz in option 2, is it like met 3 out of 4 or just take 4?
That's for all 4. So all 4 will still be in the mix.
Okay, let's vote.
Very well. So votes are coming in online. So for in-person people here, option 1, raise your hand.
3 out of 4.
I see 1. Okay, 2. Is your hand up, Adel? It's not up? Okay. Just okay. All for option 2. Okay. 1, 3, 4. Oh, okay. Good. So we got 2 and 4. All right. So votes are coming in for online people. There is apparently 7 people online, so I'm just going to wait another minute or so until the votes come in, and then we will tally them. And hopefully there will be no voter fraud like there was in history this morning, where Rose attempted to vote online and in person. Voter fraud. It's real, people. Sometimes. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'm just going to wait 1 more minute, and then we will release the results of the vote. Democracy is fun, yes? You don't know? Yeah, and part of the reason that we're doing this again is that the syllabus that we're looking at here, in a way, is kind of our contract, right? So on the first day, I give you this syllabus, and I say, this is kind of what the course is about. This is how I'm going to grade you, and it's kind of my job to stick to it. I can't just change things halfway. That's not fair to anyone, and so that's kind of why we're doing the democracy here, and this is why I'm trying to help you out a little bit, because if we change things after the fact, if we change things in week 11, it should be in a way that hopefully benefits you, and in a way that hopefully most people are on board with. So it wouldn't be fair of me to just change the terms of our deal in week 11 with no warning, right? That's not fair, that's not cool. So we're going to try and do it in a way that, of course, benefits you, and a way in which hopefully most of us agree, but I suppose we'll see when we count up the votes. Okay, 30 more seconds, and then I'm going to count the votes, okay? There are no Republican Party people hanging over my shoulder, thankfully. Did you hear yesterday that Rudy Giuliani, the president's lawyer, was actually arguing in court that, I think it was in Pennsylvania, that he wanted to actually count the votes. Like he wanted, like he and his people were going to count the votes to see if there was voter fraud.
Million of votes.
Well, his plan was he was going to count a limited selection of the votes. So he was going to count like 1,000 of them. That's okay. He was going to count 1,000 of them. And then based on that, he was going to extrapolate that to the whole state. And so, yeah, bonkers. I'm pretty sure the judge threw it out because it's crazy talk. Yeah, you can't have the president's lawyer counting ballots. Like you need a separation between the government and the people who run the election. You can't have political leaders counting their own votes. That's super biased. You cannot have that. Avera, just so you know what's going on, just because things didn't work out this term entirely the way I thought they would, I'm going to give everyone 100% in attendance and participation, because it's hard to keep track of people online. The second thing, we did no reflective activities this term because I didn't really have enough time to do them. And so that 10% has to go somewhere. And so these are the two options. We can either switch that 10%, we can add it to the quiz weighting. So the quizzes will be worth, where are the quizzes? They'll be worth 30%, but I'll take the best 3 of your 4 and I'll throw out the worst one. Or we'll split it into 5. An extra 5% will go on to micropapers, so they'll be worth 30, and an extra 5 will go on to quizzes, and they'll be worth 25. Do you have a preference that you would like to vote on? Well, yeah, what I said was that for everybody it's going to be a little different. Hopefully either way people will come out a little bit ahead. I said that for the most part micropaper marks were higher than quiz marks, and so option 2 will probably work better for the average student, but everyone's a little different. So would you like to cast a vote, or would you like to abstain? Okay. Okay, here we go. I'm going to count the votes. Vicky, you've voted twice for 2 different things. So can you just clarify? Can you clarify for me which one you actually want to vote for? Because you can't vote for both. So Vicky, just let me know what you actually want, the first one or the second one. Okay, so okay. Okay, and okay, so the vote tally is option 1, 4 votes, option 2, 9 votes. So again, option 2 is the winner. However, and so this is the thing about democracy, is democracy, of course, requires the consent of the losers. And so just because you didn't get your way, you don't have to like it, but you have to accept it. But as a gesture of gratitude and, a conciliatory gesture, what I'll do is I'll take this best 3 out of 4 and I'll apply it to option 2 as well. So people who voted for option 1, they get a little you get a little consolation prize. And people who voted for 2, well, you get your deal, but it's a little bit better. Does that sound fair to everybody? Is everybody happy with that? Okay, this is a good resolution to this particular issue. Okay, good. I feel good about this too. Yes, in capital letters, says Daniel. Okay, so that is what we'll do. What will probably happen in Microsoft, or not Microsoft, what will probably happen in CAMS is I still have some grades to upload to that, but your grade will look a little bit bizarre because CAMS doesn't let me do something like this. It doesn't let me change weightings halfway through. And so what I'll do is I'll use my Excel spreadsheet here to figure that out, and then I will, in the end, I'll override whatever CAMS calculates and give you what I have, okay? Because again, CAMS doesn't like me to rejig the grading scheme halfway through the term. So I'll figure that out, but I keep track on an Excel spreadsheet, so I have it in both places, and I will do the extra math and figure it out, okay? If people don't trust me, I can also publish my Excel spreadsheet so you can see that as well.
You don't have to.
Transparency is important. Transparency is important. But okay, if that's good, let's head back to. Yeah, I'm glad we got that resolved. It was in my head. It was in the back of my head for a while, and I was trying to figure out what am I going to do. How are we going to resolve this? But I think we have, and I like that we resolved it in a quasi-democratic fashion. There was no war. There was no revolutions. The benevolent dictator here was not overthrown, so that was good. You know, peace and prosperity will continue in the land. That's what we're going for, right? Okay. Okie dokie. So yesterday we started talking about this article on white supremacy. Can I just give you, like 5 minutes or so just to look over it again really quickly, so we jog our memories about a few things? Is that okay? Okay. So I'll just give you 5 minutes. Look over, of course, if you forgot, this article is in Microsoft Teams. Just scan over it really quickly so you remember what it says, and then we'll come back and talk about it, okay? Okay, people. So let's talk about this. So the first two questions yesterday, I think we talked about quite a bit, and we said that the major cause of domestic terrorism in the U.S. is white supremacy, right? But we said that often it's not called terrorism, right? People tend to find other words to describe what has happened rather than terrorism when it involves white people, right? And so we said the reason is that it has a little bit to do with cultural stereotypes. And so we said that in the West here, in the US and Canada, usually if you ask someone to think of what's a terrorist, into their head usually pops some sort of bearded Middle Eastern guy, maybe as a suicide bomber, or maybe he's got a machine gun or something running around the desert or some such thing, right? This is usually the stereotype that people conjure up when they hear terrorist. And we said that part of that stereotype might come from the news, it might come from Osama bin Laden, who kind of found his way into into the cultural consciousness in the 2000s after September 11th. Could have to do with movies and media who often portray terrorists as kind of Middle Eastern and bearded and potentially suicide bombers. But the data here shows us that that's actually not really the case in the United States. Mostly terrorist attacks happen or are perpetrated by white supremacists, by white people, and usually white men, right? And so the article that we read talks about a number of different groups, and all of them can kind of be found out here on the right side of the political spectrum. And so we had a little bit of a discussion yesterday about this graphic and what it means. We kind of went off on a bit of a tangent in places, but that's okay. This is good stuff to understand, especially if you want to pay attention to politics here or anywhere else. Most people can be described as falling onto the political spectrum in some place, right? And I said that at least the way things work in the West here, I'm not sure how applicable this is to other countries, but people generally have views about what the role of the government is, right? And so do we want a government that is heavily involved in people's lives and providing economic supports and regulations and things like that? Or do we want a government that kind of stays out of people's hair and lets people take care of themselves, right? And you could almost think of this in terms of parents, right? Like what kind of parent do you want? Do you want a parent that's always there supporting you and doing things for you, and they've got their nose in your business a lot, but at least they're always around and supporting you? Or do you want the type of parent that is like, yep, I'm over here if you need me, look after yourself, do your own laundry, you're doing great, kiddo. What kind of parent do you want? Because people who are out on the right, people who are conservatives, they want that kind of parent. They want the government to be that kind of parent who leaves them alone and doesn't kind of coddle them and look after them all the time. And people on the left are more comfortable with a parent or a government who is more involved and is there to support and look after the people, right? So again, it depends kind of what kind of parent or what kind of government that you want. But the people we're talking about here are way out on the right, and they have a collection of views. And what do people on the alt-right, what are their views like? They what? Monoculturalism? Yeah. They're supportive of monoculturalism, so they kind of want, in this case, mostly Americans, but they want a United States that is monoculture, that is one culture, and of course that culture is white. So they're anti-multiculturalism. What else are they anti or against? Anti what? Yeah, they're kind of anti-LGBTQ, or they're kind of homophobic. What did you say, Aliana? Same thing. Okay. What else are they against? Sometimes against abortion. Yeah. What's that? Yeah, they're anti-feminist or they're misogynist. They're anti-multiculturalism, anti-immigration, maybe. Yeah, they're racist towards non-white people. Some of them are anti-democracy, or they're kind of anarchists. Some people are just annoying trolls who just like to upset people for whatever reason. Trolls like to upset people. There's the alt-right is this collection of, odd people who are pushing back against really anything that falls outside of white, male, American, Christian values, heterosexual values, right? Anything outside of that, these groups are usually pushing against. And so again, diversity, immigration, multiculturalism. What's that? Probably to a lesser extent, but yes, I think so. Anti-feminism, all of those things they are pushing against. Okay. This is maybe a tricky question, but and I'm not sure why I wanted to ask it in the first place, but it's on here, so I'll ask it. Why are the views around abortion complex? Well, in part it is. They do talk about these groups' views toward abortion, and so I just wanted to see if we could pull that out of the article.
Yeah, so like they don't want abortion because they don't want to destroy the white race.
Right. So some of these white supremacists they don't like abortion because, specifically for white people, because they feel that their race is under threat, right? That they are going to disappear from the United States because of the increasing numbers of non-white people who are, just multiplying on their own in the United States, or who are coming in through immigration, right? So they oppose abortion for the reason that it decreases the number of white people, right? So Anna says here, because children are continuing their generation and continuing their race, really, right? And so for them, they feel that their race is under threat.
It's complex because people are deciding on essentially a life that doesn't have a say for itself.
Right.
People have different opinions on whether an unborn child or an abortion even before certain weeks is considered life. And is it killing someone? But also it's also a woman's body, so it's deciding whether she can or cannot keep it. It's a lot of factors.
Exactly. So here the abortion discussion has a bit of there's a bit of a racist tone to it, right? Because they're concerned about their own race. But greater than that, there are larger ethical and moral implications as well, right? Because ending a pregnancy is ending a life, right? And so there's questions about, is that, should that be done, right? At what point do we consider this life a person, right? If so, is there a line between the point when it's not a person and then after a certain number of months it is a person? And then there's, of course, the question of who gets to decide. Who gets to say what happens to this child? Because, of course, this child is not growing in an egg. Well, it is. But it's not growing in an egg with a shell. It's growing inside a woman's body, right? And so what is her kind of autonomy? What choices can she make? And who gets to say what choices she makes? And so there are a lot of kind of ethical and moral considerations to this. And then, of course, there's a religious layer as well, right? Because most religions are not in favor of abortion. They feel that the child is a child of God, right? God creates this life, and humans may not interfere or may not destroy that life, right? That would be an awful thing to do. So for these guys, there's a bit of a racial thing going on. There's also sometimes a religious thing going on. And then even for those of us who aren't racist or who aren't strongly religious, there are some pretty serious ethical and moral concerns, right? About, is this a life? Is it right to end this life? If it is, under what conditions is it right to end it? And then, of course, who gets to make that decision? Who gets to say what happens? And unfortunately, and maybe to take your comments a little further, Avera, unfortunately, when you're talking about abortion and rights to abortion and women's involvement in it, unfortunately, it's usually men that make the decision about it. And so whether abortions are legal or not, or the conditions under which an abortion can be obtained, interestingly, usually those decisions are made by men. Yeah, because men control governmental institutions, right? They are overrepresented in government, and so the laws that surround abortion are usually written by men. And again, from a social justice perspective, we could ask, is that right or fair that men are dictating what happens to women's bodies and what services women can or can't obtain, or what choices women can or can't make? Right? And so again, everyone, in theory, every woman has the right to choose what she does, right? Just because you can have an abortion doesn't mean that everyone would, right? It's not, for many people it's not right, and they would never do it even if they could. But again, who gets to make that decision, right? And again, in the West here, it's predominantly been made by men. There's a very recent photo, and I wish I had it in my PowerPoint presentation now, but it was a bill, I think, restricting. I think it was restricting the availability of abortions or abortion clinics within a state, and it's the signing of the bill or whatever, and you look around the table and it's all guys. It's all old white men making the rule. And there's no women there. There's no women's perspective at the table. And again, is that fair that men get to say what women can and can't do, especially in a situation where, this very much applies to women, right? Obviously, men are implicated in abortion as well, right? If it's your kid, obviously you have a little bit of investment, but it's primarily a woman's concern, right? The child is within them, and so, again, is it right that men get to decide what the rules are? And again, nobody has to answer that because this can be a volatile, emotional issue. I'm just asking you to consider who should get to make the decision about whether abortions are available and under what conditions, and again, who gets to ultimately make that choice, right? Do you want to take a little break now? I know we started a little bit late, but
I think we don't need it. We got it. 20 minutes.
you don't need it?
Yeah.
Okay.
20 minutes.
Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Is there anything that you would like to bring up with regard to kind of abortion or women's rights? There's not much more about it in the article, but since we're kind of on the topic, is there anything you want to bring up? It's a tough one. I was reading an article, and I'm not finished it yet, but the article was on screening for genetic disorders, and so the article has to do with in Denmark, and so in Denmark, women can be screened when they become pregnant. They can be screened for a number of genetic disorders, and so if the child has a genetic disorder, the woman can choose to end the pregnancy so she doesn't give birth to a child with a genetic disease. And the focus of the article was on Down syndrome. Do you know what Down syndrome is? You're born. If you Google it, you will probably have seen someone with Down syndrome in in film or television or just in real life. But they have an extra. They're born with an extra chromosome, so they think they have an extra 22nd chromosome, and that has certain. They can suffer from certain physiological problems, certain brain development problems. They have kind of a particular look. Their face looks a particular way. But since that screening became available in Denmark, almost no children with Down syndrome are being born in Denmark because those pregnancies are being ended. And so the question that the article is asking is the question that surrounds abortions as a whole, is that, what is, is this, who gets to decide if this life should continue, and how should we choose? How should we make that decision? And so I know, Aliana, you're Googling it there. Have you ever seen someone with Down syndrome? Somewhere? Anywhere? No. People with Down syndrome are quite common. I don't know what the likelihood is, but it's not super uncommon. So there are very rare genetic disorders. Down syndrome is not one of them. And so without this screening, it's possible that significant numbers of Down syndrome kids would be born in Denmark, but because of genetic screening and because women decide to almost always, in like 90% or 95% of cases, end their pregnancy, almost no kids with Down syndrome are being born in Denmark. And so, again, the article is asking questions about not only is it right to have an abortion, is it right to end your pregnancy, but under what conditions can you end it? And then again, to put another layer on it, who gets to decide what the conditions are? Right? So, if you were raped or sexually assaulted, can you end your pregnancy? If your child is going to have a genetic disorder, can you end your pregnancy? If you just didn't really mean to get pregnant right now, and this is really not a good time for you, can you end your pregnancy then? Who gets to make those decisions? Right? Yeah.
I think the only logical thing that comes to my mind is the parents of the child get to decide, especially the mom, because she's the one who has to carry the child in her. And no one's forcing anyone against abortion to make an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
But when it goes vice versa, you're actually restricting someone from freedom of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And life is seen differently by everyone. No one will ever agree on that, because for me, personally, I would never have a child because I cannot guarantee their happiness in life. And you can say that about vice versa. You cannot guarantee a child will be happy. You cannot guarantee a child will be sad. It's a personal view. Some people lead very happy lives and they just automatically assume that, oh, everyone will be happy, you shouldn't restrict that. It's a very different view that at the end of the day, if I will put that out, because that is something no one will ever agree on. So the only thing is the restrictions and the choice, and it only makes sense if the parents get to choose. And as for the government, all you have to do is provide a resource for that and let the people choose from that. Does that make sense?
It does.
So deep.
Yeah. So there's a big difference between the availability of something and then the imposition of it. And so certainly people should not be made to end their pregnancy under any circumstances. And I think most of us would probably agree with that, because that's forced sterilization, right? That's eugenics or genocide, right? When you are forcing someone to end a pregnancy for a certain reason, you're on the way to committing, eugenics or genocide, right? But from your perspective, it's the parents are the ones who get to make that choice, right? And your point is that, yeah, that no one should, that the service can be available, but it doesn't mean that everyone will do it. But the availability of it means that people can at least make the choice. On another note, it's not necessarily your job to make kids happy. That's their job. You just have to take care of them. That's it. They get to make themselves happy. You can't make other people happy.
No, like the parents have to like
What?
make the kid happy.
You can't make someone else happy.
And
No, you can't. All you can do is do your best to be there for them, and then that's it. You can't make other people happy. You can try really hard, and you can work really hard, but it doesn't often work. So, yeah, you just have to take care of them. That's all. Daniel asked what I think, and I'll tell you, although I'm risking, being that I'm on film, this is a little risky, but I'm not strongly religious, so I don't have that kind of ideology informing me of one thing or another, and so I'm making it from a very non-religious, secular point of view, and I think that, and I think I would agree with you, is that it is a personal choice, and it's one that by and large affects women only. And so, if a decision is to be made, it should be made by a woman, or, at least with the input of other women. I think that, one of the questions that runs through my mind is that, if you say, okay, no abortions, no woman may have an abortion under any circumstances, if you have women who are, I think the fear is that, if we let women have abortions, they'll just be having them all the time, right? They'll just be getting pregnant every 3 weeks and then just ending pregnancies, and this will be horrible and society will fall apart, and isn't this awful? But, if you have someone who can so easily end a pregnancy that way, do you really want them raising a child anyway, right? And my very limited experience with this, because I knew someone who did have an abortion. So this is not, this is very third hand. But from what I heard of it, there aren't really a lot of good options, right? You can end your pregnancy, but that's kind of that's a big thing, right? And that doesn't feel good in any way. And again, if it does, maybe you shouldn't be raising a child in the first place. But that doesn't feel good. That's a tough choice to make. And after it's made, you kind of live with that, right? And the other option is that you can have this child, but what if you're 17 years old and you're not finished high school, and you need to go to university and start your career and do all these things, which is going to be very difficult, if not impossible, while you're raising this child? Is that a good option? And especially maybe if the boy, or if the guy you're with, your boyfriend, maybe he's not exactly marriage material, right? Should you marry this guy just so you can do this? I don't know, right? You can carry this child and then you can give them up for adoption, but then you're going to carry this child for 9 months and then you're going to give them away, which is going to be wrenching and awful, right? So there's kind of a bunch of choices that are, none of which are that great. And so, again, I don't think that people are making these choices lightly. And I don't think that, ending a pregnancy is not necessarily the easy choice either. And so, the people who are, I think the people who are the people who most strongly oppose it, they might oppose it for religious reasons, and of course it's fine. But I think there's also this fear that somehow people are going to run around and just have them all the time, and I don't think that's the case. It's to do it, I think, is not an easy thing. And it might be the best option for you, but it doesn't mean that it's an easy one, and it doesn't mean that it's one that you'll go into the clinic and get it done and you'll walk out and say, woof, glad that's over. Anyway, let's go. It's not like that, right? It's a much more heavy decision. And so, I think that, I think that people should have the right to choose. And again, if you have strong beliefs about this, whether they're about not having abortions, whether they're informed by your religious background or just by your personal background, then don't have one. Don't do that thing. But other people have different ideas about it, and maybe there are things worse than not having a child, right? Maybe having a child that you're really not ready for, or not prepared for, or can't take care of. Maybe that's worse. And I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying it's a very complicated question, and I think it's a question that is not answerable with a definitely no, none, ever, ever, ever. And again, maybe there are some conditions in which getting one is not good either. It's a complicated question, but I think it's one that individual people should be able to make for themselves, and that governments, particularly governments that are full of men, should not make for women. I think women should make that decision for themselves. But that said, it's not an easy decision to make, I don't think. But I haven't had any personal experience, so I don't know. That's what I think, Daniel, for better or worse. Okay. Is there anything else you want to talk about or say on that issue? It's a bit of a downer. Actually, it's too late now, but it might have been interesting to tie that question into the disability unit and talk about, if you're a woman and you become pregnant and you have a genetic screening and you find out that your child has some sort of genetic defect, might not be the right word, difference or aberration or something, is it okay to end the pregnancy for that reason? And what does that say about people with disabilities? That might be an interesting question, but.
It's an assumption of the quality of life, and that comes into consideration as well, because people live different lives. A very happy person, very, privileged person might see life as something to look forward to.
Yeah.
But not everyone thinks that way. So that comes into play as well. That's an important role, I guess. And I don't know what else to say.
No, that's the article that I was reading that I'm not done asks that very question, is that what is a life that is worth living, and who gets to say what that is, right? And so if someone has Down syndrome, is their life not worth living? I mean, can they not enjoy a lot of the things that we enjoy, like hanging out with friends and watching movies and talking and being outside and eating and sleeping in and all the stuff that playing video games, all of the things that we enjoy doing, people with Down syndrome can enjoy doing as well. And so, is their life not worth living for some reason because they have Down syndrome? Or, and if so, or if not, are we the ones who get to tell them that it's not worth living? Us people who don't have Down syndrome and don't know what that's like? Big question, right? A very popular person with Down syndrome, because I'm from Edmonton, of course, and in Edmonton, the hockey team, the Edmonton Oilers, way back in the 80s, do you know who Wayne Gretzky is? Oh man, like the greatest hockey player to ever play the game, Wayne Gretzky. Number 99?
Most of us grew up in tropical countries
I know.
without hockey.
I know. Okay, so basically the greatest hockey player to ever play the game is probably Wayne Gretzky. And in the 1980s, Wayne Gretzky played, improbably, for the Edmonton Oilers. And so we had a great team at the time. Hockey was huge in the city. We had all these great players. It was really fun. And Wayne was dating this woman who her younger brother had Down syndrome. His name was Joey Moss. And Wayne Gretzky went to the team manager and said, hey, I know this guy, Joey. Can we find him a job in the organization? And so they made him they hired him, the Edmonton Oilers hired him to be kind of like their locker room guy. And so he was, he picked up all the towels and he got them washed and he laid them all out and he cleaned the dressing room and filled the water bottles. And sometimes he was on the Oilers bench handing water bottles to the guys and patting them on the back and stuff like that. And so they brought him into the organization and kind of made him one of them. And he recently died. He died about a couple weeks ago. He was only 57. But one of the problems with having Down syndrome is that you have a bunch of other health complications that can arise as well. And so he was suffering from Alzheimer's disease, which is pretty early at 57, but I guess that can happen. And I think I forget if he died of pneumonia because he had a broken hip. There was something else wrong, and he died. So he died quite young as compared to most people. But again, for a huge portion of his life, not a huge portion, but a long portion of his life, he was an Edmonton Oiler, right? He was in the dressing room with all the hockey players. Everyone knew him by name, and he was like part of their family, and he was part of that organization, part of that institution. And is that a life not worth living? He had a great life. He was a minor celebrity in Edmonton. Everyone knows who Joey Moss is. Everyone knows who Joey Moss is. I'm pretty sure there's a mural in Edmonton somewhere dedicated to him. So everyone knows who this guy is. And again, you can Google him after and see. But yeah, but again, if his mom was able to screen her pregnancy earlier and saw that he was going to be born with Down syndrome, obviously it wasn't possible in 1960 or 70 when he was born, but she might have ended that pregnancy, right? And he wound up having a great life. A little bit shorter statistically than many people, but there's no guarantees, right? So
I'm not saying that I'm against them living, but not everyone's lucky like him to have a sister who didn't.
very true. So yeah, people with Down syndrome can have a whole host of different physical issues and also like mental development issues. And so some are, there's a really broad spectrum, and some people suffer all kinds of heart defects, I know, are part of it, gastrointestinal problems. Again, they have sort of cognitive issues, and again, it varies, right? So yeah, Joey had a great life and was generally well for most of his life until the end. But yeah, not everyone will be like that. And again, you don't really know how that's going to manifest until the child is born and until they grow up. You see what kind of health issues they may or may not have. So you're right, Joey had a great life, and he was very lucky to be kind of pulled into the Oilers by Wayne Gretzky. But not everyone is so lucky, right? And not everyone is so lucky in terms of their health or their cognitive development as well, right? Some people are going to have a lot of health problems and are going to be in and out of the hospital for their whole life, right? But again, that's sometimes the case of non-Down syndrome people as well, right? Some people have ongoing chronic health issues. But it's a tricky decision, right? Especially when you don't really know how it's going to turn out. I think it's easier if you know that if you have if you identify a genetic disorder where the doctor can say, this child will probably not survive. This is an extreme genetic problem. They won't live, right? Then it's an easier decision. But for someone with Down syndrome who can have, a very full, fun life, it's more difficult, right? Whew, tough questions this morning, right? Nothing but tough questions and no answers. You know what? I think I might end it there. Can I end it there? It is Friday, right? And to be honest, full disclosure, I woke up with a bit of a headache this morning, and it hasn't really gone away, and I think it's actually getting worse. So I'm kind of feeling like I'm not fully on. So I think I might end it today. I'll put up Daniel's comment here. I think life is the time you get to do and learn as many things as possible in an uncertain period of time. Yeah, that's true for all of us, right? It's true for Joey. It's true for Joey Moss. It's true for it's true for all of us, right? And so we can't really
We don't choose our lives.
and we don't really and we can't really tell what's going to happen, right? Even if you don't have a genetic disorder or issue. Maybe I'll just 1 second here. Oops, that's not what I want to do. Yeah, so there's Joey. I think so. Hang on. Whoops, that's a really small picture. Can we make it bigger? No, we can't. That's him in 2008. Maybe there's some more pictures of him further down. So you can see here, yeah, he's from Edmonton, born in 1963, is born with Down syndrome. That's not a great picture. Yeah. So here's a picture of some kids with Down syndrome, and again, they tend to have their facial features tend to be, particularly their kind of eyes and nose. They tend to have a certain look about them, and so it's fairly easy to tell when someone has Down syndrome. But Joey, whoops, no, there we go. But Joey did, and again, he was sort of added to the Edmonton Oilers organization when he was probably around 20 years old, and worked for them for his entire life. And so, yeah, you can see him. Here he is singing the national anthem at one of the Oilers games, and I assume everyone in the building was probably singing along with him. And again, he wound up being a bit of a minor celebrity. This is I don't know, they might be retiring someone's jersey here maybe. So this is kind of the Oilers that were around in the time, like in the 1980s. This is kind of the big players. So on the right there's Mark Messier, and then Joey's down there, Wayne Gretzky, Yari Curry, Grant Fuhr, who I met once, that was really cool, and Paul Coffey. What's that? Was it the what? The page? The what of that picture? Oh. Yeah. Yeah, so anyway, yeah, he's very, that doesn't work, sorry. Yeah, so he's very popular, and here, one of the Oilers is getting some advice from Joey on the bench. And yeah, he was an important part of the Oilers. He was kind of a symbol for them. And again, was his life not worth living because he had this genetic disorder? Tough question. I assume if you asked him, he would say, no, my life is awesome, which by any really by any measurement it is, right? He loved sports, he loved Edmonton, and he got to be a member of the Oilers for 30 years, right? Incredible. And again, he's a celebrity. He was a celebrity in Edmonton. Him walking around Edmonton, I'm sure people recognized him every 2 minutes because everybody knows who Joey is.
So I want to do with hockey in Canada.
Hockey's a thing in Canada. It's basically our national sport. And yeah, I mean, not everyone is a fan. Not everyone watches all the time. But overall, people do watch hockey here. It is a thing. And you know, when I was growing up, you know, the Oilers were one of the best teams in the league. Now we're kind of pretty unexciting. But at the time, they were really exciting. They were a really exciting team. Edmonton was a smaller city, and to have a team that was that good, and in Canada where people love hockey so much, yeah, huge. So Daniel here asks, could the answer be it's for him to decide whether to make it worth living or not? Yeah, I think that's a good thing. But unfortunately, when you genetically screen and end pregnancies, they don't get to make the decision, right? Parents make the decision. And again, what are the implications of that? And one of the implications of that is that guys like Joey probably wouldn't exist, right? Guys like Joey and girls like Joey aren't existing. They're not being born in Denmark and in other places as well because they're being screened out, right? We know when the woman's still pregnant early on. We know if they're going to have Down syndrome, and you can do something about it. But it's a very difficult question. Should you?
Is like the name Edmonton Oilers, like they name it because like Edmonton has a lot of oil.
Yep, that's where the name comes from. Maybe I'll wear my Oilers jersey on Monday. What? Wear it? Okay, I'll wear it. What's that? No. Okay. Okay, that is all for today. We've kind of arrived at a place where there's lots of complicated questions. There's no clear answers, but that's okay. I'll end class here. I'm glad that we talked about that. I'm glad that we settled that whole grading issue thing because that was sitting in the back of my mind and I wanted to solve it. Hope everyone has a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday. Thanks, Anna. I'm sure I'll feel better soon. I'm going to go see if Claire has any Tylenol or Advil for me. So see you all. Bye.